Hey there, my fellow author. I'm Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, an old soul kind of writer living my dream as a full-time author and authorpreneur. But I didn't start out living a confident, creative lifestyle. I struggled with the fears and the mental and emotional barriers that so often plague writers at all stages of their author career. But the truth is that with the right knowledge, tools, and training, you can overcome those barriers. I'm here to teach you how I've developed a lifestyle that's allowed me to publish 19 books and counting. Each week, as you tune into the Confident Fiction Author podcast, you'll get clarity on the steps you need to take to advance your writing career. Whether it's developing your ideal writing routine, tackling new skills like dictating your fiction, or overcoming the obstacles life throws your way, this podcast will help you live a more confident, creative lifestyle. Let's get started. Hey there, my friend, and welcome to this week's episode of the Confident Fiction Author podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, and today we are going to talk about how you can do more by doing less. In the author world today, we face information overload and analysis paralysis. There are so many decisions we have to make every day about how we're spending our time, our energy, our money when it comes to writing and publishing and marketing our books. But what if I told you there was a formula to help you decide which things that are actually worth your time? Like, what if you had a way to determine what is most worth your time? I mentioned this in a previous podcast episode that creative confidence starts with clarity. But how do you find clarity, especially when you're evaluating your time? So today I'm going to share a remarkable tool or formula for evaluating anything from time to energy to the money you invest in your author career. Unlocking this tool and really getting it in your brain will change the way you understand your own efforts and will give you more confidence as you move forward in your author career. So let's get into it. What is the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle? So this is a statistical concept loosely observed in many contexts that states roughly 80% of outcomes result from 20% of causes. Now, I know we are writers, we're not mathematicians, so don't nod off just yet, because I'm going to break this down in layman's terms. It basically just means that most of our desired results tend to come from just a few specific actions or habits. This has long been quoted in sales as the 80% of sales come from 20% of clients. Now, why does this matter? Why do the numbers 80-20 matter to your life as an author and living your ideal creative lifestyle? You probably don't care about statistics. You care about writing. You care about words and creating story worlds. But this 80-20 is a helpful principle to recognize when you are evaluating and decluttering your life as an author. And I talked about decluttering a couple of episodes ago. So if you missed that, go check it out on how to not only declutter your physical life, but your time. And this 80-20 plays into that. It is not a math lesson. This quote, law or rule is actually a generalization, and it's about a concept, not so much the specific numbers. So keep that in mind as we break this down on how to apply it to your writing life. Number one is thinking about which series or books sell the best. So as an author, if you're more advanced in your career, you most likely have multiple books under your belt and even multiple series. I know a lot of authors who are writing in more than one series at a time. They may have 2, 3, 4 series going on, even multiple pen names that they're selling books under, all these different genres. So that takes up a lot of time and energy. And if you are just getting started out, this is something that you can go ahead and have in your mind to think about taking on producing that many books and really choosing what you want to write, or if you are in that position where you have multiple series going, multiple genres, you'll be looking at choosing what to write more of. So you may be looking at writing more in a series that's top selling, or just recognizing a sales pattern in a certain genre and where you want to take your series that's in that genre from here. Maybe you usually write Civil War historical fiction, but your cozy mysteries sell the most copies. And that would be an example of 20% of your books representing 80% of your sales. And you may really enjoy writing Civil War historical fiction, but to create a sustained author career, you may have to make that decision to put more of your effort into your cozy mystery brand to keep you going in your author career. Not saying that you have to abandon your passion projects, but rather than putting 80% of your effort toward those, it may be something that has to go in the oven. So talking about the stovetop analogy, you can only have so many things on your 4-burner stove going at one time. And ideally, what you have on the stove cooking should be that 20% that is really creating the author lifestyle that you want. Now, let's talk about habits. Which habits produce the most results? You may notice that days when you wake up early to take a walk, that you have the most energy on those days and the best productivity all throughout the day, the best sustained energy. Or it may be within your hobbies like crocheting, and you find you have your best moments of inspiration or in detangling a plot or character issue in your story when you're just sitting and quietly crocheting. So when we're thinking about 80-20, really dig deep to find the things that give you that energy, that help you be more productive, give you those moments of inspiration, and be careful that you don't discard those because they're not direct action that you would associate with sitting down and writing books or marketing your books. It may be something that is supporting that indirectly, but it would still fall into that 20% of your results. Now, on the flip side of that, maybe you have a weekly or a monthly book club that really takes up a lot of your time and energy, but it doesn't seem to give you inspiration or motivation or any kind of energy in return. Maybe the books that are in that club are just really not what you care to read, but you're a part of the club and you want to be a great member and read the books and take part in the discussions, but you've come away from it actually feeling more drained and like you wish you could have gotten those hours back. So maybe you drop the book club and make more time for crocheting instead. And of course, the reverse could be true. Maybe you spend a lot of time crocheting and being around other writers and talking about books energizes and inspires you. So it's really an awareness thing, being aware of what gives you energy, how you feel after you finish an activity, and how that affects your productivity and your lifestyle as an author. Now, let's talk about professional investments and which professional investments have the highest returns for your author life. Something to keep in mind is that everything is an investment, not just money, but also time, energy, and other resources like gas and mileage put on your vehicle. Whenever you commit to something, there is going to be a cost in most likely more than one of these categories. And I think the one that is most overlooked is energy. You might spend a lot of money on conferences and workshops throughout the year and selling your books there, but really 80% of your sales or your best, most energizing experiences are at just one or two of those events. So really, it's just 20% of all the travel that you're doing is producing 80% of your opportunities. I know that was the case for me. I was doing a lot of speaking and travel after I released my first book in 2013, at the end of 2013, the first part of 2014, and it was fantastic. It was a great way to kick off my author career in terms of I had published my first book. I was meeting lots of great people and building relationships. I have no regrets of any of that. At the time, it was my 20%. It was producing 80% of my networking connections and my friendships, my professional relationships, and book sales because I wasn't doing much online at the time. What I found though, as the years went on, I just kept doing it because I thought that's what I needed to do. I didn't sit down and evaluate what I really should be doing in that season of my author career. And once I did that, I came to the realization that every event I went to really drained me of energy. It was energizing in terms of being around people and it was fun, but if it was a multi-day event, it really just exhausted me. Or if I was having to give one or more presentations and be a part of intense discussions, and I would come home and all of a sudden my office and my house was just a wreck because I'm unloading everything from my trip and just sort of throwing it all over the place and getting right back into my work. And sometimes weeks would go by before I unpacked and inventoried my books. And it was just something that I started to dread. And I finally came to the realization that those were no longer activities that were yielding the highest returns. They were no longer my 20%. It was becoming that 80%, where it was taking up 80% of my time and energy in my professional career and only producing about 20% results. That's when I made the decision to really cut down on travel and speaking and just having to say no to those events. Even though they were a good opportunity, I knew I could sell some books, I knew I could build some relationships, but it just wasn't where I was at in that season of my author career. And so in 2019, I greatly reduced all of that. And a few years after that, I made the decision to stop wholesaling my books direct. So I used to get boxes of books in, and I would have to open the boxes, unpack them, inspect them for damaged copies, repack them, and then when orders would come in for a wholesale venue that I had or an individual reader, I would have to go through my books, pull out the right ones, get them all signed, package, print off mailing labels, tape it all up, go to the post office. And aside from that, I had to go to the store and get shipping supplies or order shipping supplies. And I finally came to the realization that I'm not in that season anymore, and I'm really not enjoying this. I love signing books for readers, but I was like, do I really need to keep all of these boxes stacked in my office and have that time consumption of having to make claims on damaged copies or poor quality copies and claim those with Amazon KDP or whoever I was using to do my print on demand? And I was like, I don't enjoy this. This does not energize me. It drains me. I dread it. And it's really only producing 20% of my results at this time, if that. And so I realized all I had to do was give myself permission to let that go. And my compromise to that is I will continue to, when I have a new book come out, I will get a box or two of those books for my diehard fans that they want a signed copy. They have been collecting the entire series, so they really want that signed paperback copy from me. I will continue doing that with my new releases. I'm just not going to carry my backlist in my office. And that seemingly small decision made a huge difference in my time and my energy and what I'm able to put toward my author career now, and ultimately in being able to write and publish more books, which is what my readers want anyway. They're not so concerned if I have my backlist copies sitting in my office. They want to see more books from me. So really assess where you're at in your author career. And again, it's seasons. I had that season of doing wholesale books and travel and all. That may be where you're at, and that may energize you. That may really, if you're more of an extroverted author, that may be your jam and you really enjoy it and it energizes you. But still assess what's the cost to you in terms of time and money and other resources, and make sure that that is in your 20% and not in 80% that is only producing 20% of your results. Okay, so what are some other investments to consider? Again, going back to seasons of life. So take a look at the groups that you're in, the writing groups, whether it's online marketing groups or publishing groups, or maybe your local writers group or your critique group. I shared this in a previous episode where I was in a wonderful critique group for about 3 years, and I loved it. I loved showing up every week with my pages to be critiqued. And then when my dad passed away in 2012, I needed to cut some things out of my life so that I would have room for grief, and I was also moving into a new season. Like literally the next day, I got the phone call from the NMAI, the National Museum of the American Indian, that I had been accepted into their Artist and Leadership program. So I was facing grief and being a part of that program, which involved a 2-week research trip to Washington, D.C. and multiple presentations. And that was all within a couple of months after my dad had passed. And I made the decision at that time to bow out of Toastmasters and out of my writing critique group, which I loved both of those things. I loved the people. At the same time, I had also felt that the season for that was winding down because I was really moving into online circles and making decisions to move my professional career forward and really get into publishing books. And so that was a season of life, and it was a great season, those 3 years. So you may have a group that you love and you love being a part of, but really take a look at, have you outgrown that group? Have you moved past where a lot of people are if they're not really into advancing their career and you are, which if you're listening to this podcast, you most likely are really looking for ways to advance your author career and achieve that ideal creative lifestyle that you want to live. And maybe that's just not where your group is at. Maybe it's more hobby writers who are fun to be around, although sometimes maybe they are draining you. Maybe there are some negative people in there, and just know it's okay to let go of groups and find new groups to spend your time with that really energize you and that are at the same season or close to the same season of life that you're in. So take some time to evaluate, is 80% of your energy going toward 20% of your results in terms of how you are professionally networking for your author career and the groups that you're in to do that. And also think about the books that you're reading and the classes that you're taking. Are they actually benefiting you? Maybe you're spending a lot of time reading craft books, but that time in reading craft books is taking time from other tasks that you notice have more return, such as critique swaps with a trusted critique partner, or even sitting down to write itself. What a concept. Sometimes we get so into the weeds of craft and conferences and going to all of the classes and doing all of the things that we neglect just sitting down to write. So those are some things to think about when you're choosing what to invest in for your author career. Now, if figuring out the top 20% feels difficult to par down, think about it in reverse. Which things in your author life have the least return? What do you spend 60, 70, even 80% of your time doing and you get the least results? Try starting there. Like I said, for me, it was cutting down on travel and carrying loads of inventory of my backlist. I knew that I was spending a lot of time and mental energy on that, and it was just not producing the results and was taking away from my actual writing time. So start there. Look at, rather than trying to identify your top 20% of what's giving you the most results, let's start looking at that 80%. And again, you can refer back to my episode on decluttering, and that's a great place to start with shifting from that 80% to really focusing on your 20%, because once that 80% is being cleared and chopped and trimmed away, it's much easier to see what is producing the best results for you. I'll give you a hack, and that is one of the most common and easy to recognize examples of the inverted 80-20 law, where you're more looking at what that 80% drain is the time that many authors spend on social media. So often this preoccupies 70 or 80% more of their writing life with 20% or less return. Often it's much less. And this is where that constantly assessing what used to work and what no longer works or no longer fits your season of life comes in. Back in the day when social media was in its early rodeo days, you could go into reader groups or start your own reader group and get massive sales from that. That was a great strategy and it worked for a while, but it very quickly died away. Even so, many authors, because of that gold rush in the beginning, got on social media and made it a habit to spend a lot of time on there because it was a strategy that used to produce really great results. So take an honest assessment of how much time you're spending on social media as an author and be honest with what your actual returns are on that investment of your time and energy in social media. Again, I'm going to refer you back to my episode on essentialism and decluttering. That's episode number 14. That will help you really identify those things that can be decluttered from your life so that you can start focusing on that top 20%. All right, just to reiterate here, this is not a math lesson. This 80-20 is just a principle. It's just a generalization, and it's about the concept, not so much the specific numbers of 20 and 80. You're just thinking about the concept of what is really taking away from my best results and my best productivity and really taking me in the direction that I want to go in my author career. So be honest with yourself. I was reading in a business book recently where it was talking about the top leaders have the ability to be brutally honest about the facts and to really assess the facts while still having faith that they were going to be successful in the end. So convincing yourself that something is working when it isn't won't build your confidence as an author. Being honest in evaluating your activities will. And the more you do that, the more you are brutally honest about the facts and keep the faith that the good decisions you're making today will still get you where you want to go, is the encouragement I want to leave you with from this episode, because I believe you can achieve that ideal creative lifestyle that you've dreamed of. All right, my friend, I want to just leave you with saying that you can go download my free Confident Fiction Author Toolkit. That's over at fictioncourses.com/toolkit. In there are my top 20% tools that I use in my creative lifestyle. I put that together so that you would have an easy to reference toolkit if you're curious about what my author lifestyle looks like and what is in it that are really productive for me. I created that toolkit. It's free. You can go get it again at fictioncourses.com/toolkit. That is it for this week. I will see you in next week's episode of the Confident Fiction Author Podcast. Until then, take care.